Welcome to How to Be an Okay Person. Is that the show called? How to Be an Okay Person. Yeah. Okay.
Oh my God.
I just thought I might have abbreviated something.
You've lost it all. You've lost
I feel like
it's
just, there's like so many teeny tiny words in the title that I could have said one of them wrong, like how to be a okay person, which I know is grammatically not correct. So we don't even need to go over that. Deep breath. Welcome to How to Be an Okay Person. I am Lindsay Chrysler.
And I am Robbie Carlton. Hi.
Hi. We're back. It's 2018.
It is. Some people are claiming a little prematurely, I think, that 2018 is going better than 2017 went.
Agreed. It's way premature. People are flapping.
They're like, oh, 2018
this is going to be the year.
It's good. Like, everything's coming. And it's like,
no. We are climbing our way out 1 month at a time.
Yeah.
And I think, I agree. I have felt the same way. When people were doing a lot of New Year's memes about like, goodbye to 2017 and welcome to 2018, I was like, guys, let's just say goodbye to 2017.
Let's not welcome anything else in.
No. I feel proud of us for recording before February is here. I feel like this is still the new year in January. It's
real close.
It's close. We're definitely cutting it close. But it's still January.
Yeah.
Recording.
Yeah.
When this will actually be out is another thing, but not to take any digs at you about editing at all.
Oh yeah, really? Yeah. Just throw me under that bus.
To everyone listening, Robbie does.
I showed up and did the recording right on time. However long it takes Robbie to edit the whole thing.
Okay, I was just gonna give you a huge shout out before you made me talk like a Muppet. So.
No, come on, give me the shout out.
You're about to get everything you've ever wanted to hear about your editing.
I still want it. I take it back. I take that Muppet voice back.
To our listeners, Robbie does all of the editing, and he does an amazing job. I do not, once I record, I do not do anything. Robbie tirelessly. Well, sometimes you get tired, but see, I can't even give it to you all the way. I don't know what is with me today.
No, it's okay. I get tired. That's fine. That's just accurate.
You get tired sometimes, but you tirefully and persistently.
Let's just keep the tired factor out of it completely. I don't think that's relevant. Sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I'm not.
Okay.
It's like
I'll choose
neutral.
a new adjective.
Yeah. Expertly.
See, we collaborate on everything, even complimenting you.
Well, it doesn't go that well if I just leave it to you.
Anyway, you do a really good job editing. So I take back my comment about we'll see how long this takes, because you take it pretty seriously.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do take it seriously. Too seriously. The last one, I got to the point where it was something like an average of like an hour of editing for every 10 minutes of audio. Which is not cool.
Wow. Wow. And it was an hour-long show?
Yeah, so it was like, what's that, like 6 hours of editing? Yeah,
wow.
That sounds about right.
Wow.
And that's like taking out every little and like any place. Like there were moments where we would talk over each other and I would reconstruct the conversation and like take little like moments from like earlier on just to this is totally behind the scenes terrible right now, but just to kind of make everything make sense, like I would take an okay from like earlier on and put it like
I didn't know it was that detailed.
I'm hand stitching these podcasts. This one I went too far. I'm not going to be doing that anymore, but it's fun for me. I mean, I just get into a zone of like wanting to craft it.
We got a lot of fun feedback on the last episode, so I don't really have anything else to say about that. It's just fun to hear people talking about flapping and going down, and I feel like over the holidays it was good for people to have a little. I feel like everyone went down. I feel like there's no way to not go down over the holidays, so.
For sure. I mean, it's what it's for, right? It's like literally, it's the season of the down. I mean, it was like, yeah. It's perfect. And yeah, I think that was like the most feedback we've had outside of the grid, which is the most feedback we've ever had, is for the down. And it's kind of satisfying because they're like
opposites.
Two wings of a bird.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I have been cooking on like, oh, we need to do one that's like, given the down, how do you get back up?
Yes. I feel like a humble, I know maybe we'll do a show about this. I feel like a humble, bite-sized grid is one way.
Agreed.
The month of January, I did a humble pie grid. One of my X's being dance to one song. Very helpful. That dancing to one song was actually very helpful.
Good.
Hey, Lindsay here. A quick note before you keep listening. In this episode, we talk about some potentially sensitive stuff, like sexual abuse and unpleasant sexual experiences. Not everyone wants to listen to that, so I wanted to warn you in case those topics aren't for you. Also, when talking about sex in this episode, we speak about straight men having sex with straight women. We know this is not the only kind of sexual relationship or gender identity there is. So I want to specifically point this out because we want all of our listeners to feel included. And we also want to speak from our own experience. Okay, back to the show.
So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get topical, but hopefully we're going to make it general and helpful. So it's going to be all three things: topical, but also general and helpful.
Right.
The topic is, I mean, kind of inspired by, if that's the right word, the story, I think the website is called babe.net, about the Aziz Ansari date.
Yeah.
Which has been, variously described as a bad date and as sexual assault of some kind.
Right.
And so, this is part of the broader current of the Me Too, #MeToo movement that's happening over social media. Mostly, I mean, would you just say that, right? Like, this is a social media thing. Like, is it happening outside of social media? I guess in the sense that people are actually getting fired in the real world, but like it's literally a hashtag, right? There hasn't been a march yet. I mean, maybe the recent women's march had the spirit of it. So I don't know. Everybody knows what Me Too is. There isn't a person listening to this that doesn't know what Me Too is, unless you're listening, 50 years in the future, in which case, awesome. And
we love you.
We love you. Thanks for listening. And you'll go Google Me Too or whatever the equivalent of Google is. Or, watch out for the giant sentient cockroaches and good luck scrapping together enough food to eat. I
really don't think that's going to happen, but okay.
Good.
Yeah, I just don't think we're heading towards a time where we're running out of food. I just really don't.
I'm so happy for you. That's great. It must be very pleasant. I don't, let's not get
anyway.
Into any further. So Me Too, you all know what Me Too is. And you probably all know what the Aziz Ansari story is. If you don't, we will link to it in the show notes, which you can find on your podcast player or by going to howtobeanokperson.com. And we'll give you like the synopsis very briefly. So the story is it's an interview with a young woman who went to an award show and kind of basically was picked up by, but it kind of sounds more like she was doing the picking up in the story. Aziz Ansari, the comedian and actor. And so they go on a date, and he very quickly invites her back home from the date, and then there ensues a kind of drawn out sexual encounter where basically she was very, very uncomfortable and wasn't really cool with what was going on, and was kind of like would do some stuff. She doesn't really talk about why, but for some of the reasons that women in that situation will do some stuff, and then she would kind of back off and say, wait, no, I don't want to, but then, and so there was this kind of back and forth. But the way that the story is written is to kind of demonize Aziz Ansari as this like very aggressive, kind of forcing his sexuality on this woman in a way that she was clearly didn't want any part of, and that she was kind of like having to navigate this situation for a long time, and then eventually it gets too much and she leaves, and maybe she leaves in tears, or she's very upset soon afterwards, and she kind of texts him to say, hey, like, just so you know, that was a really unpleasant experience. I don't have the exact quotes, you can read in the article, but this is the gist. Like, that was a really unpleasant experience. Like, I feel like terrible and violated, essentially. And Aziz Ansari's response was, oh man, like, I didn't know that was going on for you. This was like a miscommunication, and I'm sorry you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then, and then there was, after the release of this article, there was like a whole kind of media response, and for everything from kind of like, oh, this is, like we said, like, this is this egregious sexual assault, and like, Aziz Ansari is like supposed to be a feminist, but clearly blah, 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 to the other pole of like, this was just a bad date. Like, we can't go around policing people about this stuff.
Right.
And so that's kind of like, that's the stage. And what I got inspired to talk about on the podcast as a result of that is not that story specifically, because like we don't know the details and blah blah blah, and like I just and
it's been
just
done.
feels like,
I mean, it's
just been done. Like everything's been said.
Crazily done.
Right, everything has been said on the kind of the specifics of that story. But I wanted to address a more general thing and a question of like what, like, because that story, like, maybe some of the details are extreme, and it's funny, like there's a generational thing, like people are talking about like feeling prudent, like reading the details, and like there are people that are kind of like in their 50s who are reading details and like, oh my god, like what are you guys doing on a first date? And I felt a little like that.
Really? There
was some stuff that felt like, it did feel like, whoa, like this, yeah, a little.
So interesting.
I mean, not that I haven't done stuff on a first date, but I don't know. I think maybe it was to do with kind of some of the, so for me, like, I mean, we're getting, this is a tangent, but like for me, some of the more like kind of dominant, like aggressive sexual stances come online once I'm pretty comfortable with a person. That's not how I lead in like a new sexual relationship with a new person. I don't lead with like the aggressive, like kind of like sticking your fingers down someone's throat and like this, like I feel like that's something that like, it's just something that takes a little more comfort in the relationship, intimacy for me to feel comfortable with. Like that's so I think maybe that's all it was. I'm just like, whoa. Anyway, so that specific story has been done to death, but the more general story, and let's just say like whether this is what happened in that case or not, I don't even want to like pass judgment on. Like I said, we weren't there, we don't know. But it's has a similar shape to a more general phenomena, which I think everyone is familiar with, where a man is aggressively pursuing sex with a woman, and the woman is uncomfortable, and she's kind of trying to communicate that with non-verbal cues or slightly ambiguous verbal cues. Like, right, rather than saying like, no, I don't want to have sex with you, it's like, can we slow down? That's like, it like, obviously that's a verbal cue, and it's open to different interpretations. Like in Search Party, which is a show, Portia's on which is a show. It's an amazing show. You should watch it. There's a scene where one of the characters, Portia, it has to like kind of be on a date with a guy she doesn't want to be on a date with for her friend's nefarious purposes, and he's kind of trying to make out with her, and he's like making out with her, and she doesn't want it, and so she says, can we just like go slow, can we slow down? And so he's like very slowly like crawls, he's like, oh sure, yeah, we can slow down, and he very slowly crawls across the couch over to her and starts like kissing her. So like it's just like slightly ambiguous communication, but so that situation, and then you have this like mismatch between this man and the woman, and then the woman ends up feeling crappy about it, and some anywhere from just like, this didn't go the way I wanted, to like, wow, I feel really gross and violated, and the man feels like kind of disappointed and confused, and like he wanted something and he didn't get what he wanted, and like, or he got it and he doesn't know that she had a terrible experience, right? Yeah, or he got it, and then maybe he doesn't know why she doesn't call back, or maybe he doesn't care. But like part of this, the conversation I want to have is like, I think most men care. Like most men actually want to have a positive impact on women that they have sexual relationships with, and so it's not, for the most part, oh, he just doesn't care. Like those guys are out there that just like they're just using women as sexual objects, and they really don't give a fuck. Like, they're definitely out there, and but this is when those people are probably not listening to our podcast, and it's, you know, and if they are, then maybe they'll get something. But it's possible to care, and it's actually good to care, and it causes massive benefit to both people. That would be my invitation for those people. Mostly, I think it's a different thing that's going on, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that kind of setup?
Well, I'll say I like the question. I like getting out of the analysis of the journalism and the whether Aziz Ansari is a good person or not. And we're actually getting out of that question and into the question of how can we help? How can we, like this, because my experience reading the article was I've definitely had a similar experience to her. I mean, or I've just had sexual encounters that left me feeling bad on a scale of kind of till it really, really bad. So I like the question of what's going on that has this being such a common experience that people are relating to so much that they don't recognize anything about that article being about sexual assault. As you know, there's a lot of people that think that's just a normal bad sexual encounter, and it happens to everybody, and it's happened to everybody multiple times. So
right,
I like the question.
And I guess what's interesting is, for me, I loaded up when I was kind of asking this question, and the like what I loaded up was mostly like what's going on for the man and what adjustments can we make for the man. But as you were speaking, I was thinking, oh, and like what's going on for the woman and what adjustments can she make is also a question.
Yeah.
Right? And there's some way that like giving adjustments for the man is a politically safer thing to do.
Way safer.
But as you were speaking, I'm like, oh, well, you've been in that situation. I imagine the you of today would respond very, very differently to a situation like that from the you of 10 years ago.
Yes, absolutely.
And that you have learned a lot of things about navigating those kind of situations, which would be helpful.
Yes, avoid them at all costs. Don't talk to anyone that feels bad. No, but it's taken me many adjustments. It's taken me many, many, many adjustments to get to the place now where I don't think I have any more of those situations in my future. Mainly, I don't drink so as much. I just don't drink as much. But that was the main adjustment I made. But there's been many, many adjustments. Yes. And what would have been amazing is, well, that gets into the bigger topic. Yeah, it's a political safer conversation to talk about the male adjustments because there is a female safety thing that is true, no matter how self-aware or empowered or like trusting of my voice and my truth and speaking up and being able to walk away. There have been moments where I felt unsafe.
And that's one of the asymmetries in these situations is that the men in the situation very, very rarely, I mean, specifically in this situation, there are sexual situations where a man might experience this, but in this kind of situation we're talking about, the man is not having a fight or flight experience. He's not adrenalized. He's not in a state of kind of like safety fear, whereas the woman very well might be, right? So that's an asymmetry right there. And I think is part of what's going on. And that the man is not even considering that there is this difference. Mm-hmm. Right, this asymmetry.
Right.
And I think that that's like when this Me Too stuff first came out, I remember tracking a bunch of experiences that I've had that would constitute like that I could have written a Me Too post, right? And I didn't because I didn't want to, and it didn't feel appropriate, and for any number of reasons. But I remember tracking in my own history, like, oh, there was this time at the sex cult where they like kind of made me have sex with someone, and there was the time like when I was a teenager, and this woman basically kind of pressured me into sex, and like, you know, there were several situations like this that like, oh, this is my version of this, and my system just doesn't have much charge about any of those experiences. And which is not to say that like again like there are times when men genuinely like men are victims of sexual abuse, right? That yes. can happen. So I don't want to discount those experiences, but I think that there's just because of that asymmetry about physical safety, that the cases where it kind of leads to trauma are fewer for men than for women. I do think that there's a differential there, and I think that the lack of understanding of that is partly what causes men to behave in ways that traumatize women. Right? Like the men don't get that it's a big deal, because for them it wouldn't be such a big deal, right?
Right.
And I do think that I think that that's one of the kind of important differences here. It's not the only thing we're going to talk about, but yeah. Does that make sense? Does that fit for you? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I shared with the Me Too movement when it first started on Facebook, and the main the Me Too movement is a little like it's taken on this other side of this, like the way I related to it were women speaking up about their experiences of being violated to show that there's like a lot of violation happening and we need to do something about it. And
yes.
The main reason I was, and then I sorted back in my history. I'm like, oh yeah, like I feel really unsafe in nature. I feel really unsafe all the time. Walking my dog and walking in the street. There's like a lack of safety that I still feel from being sexually violated, when it was not about alcohol or frat parties or anything like that. It was, I mean, there was those violations too. But there's a way that I can sort of take responsibility for drinking too much and all those other things. With the other one, I'm like, well, I don't feel safe in the world as a woman. I just don't feel safe. And I'm constantly slightly on guard. And I wonder, and so the safety thing was a big part of the reason why I spoke up in the Me Too movement. It's tricky with the Aziz Ansari thing because, well, no, he had that power. He has the like political, I guess the political power. There's the physical safety and then there's like the political power and the ability. But then look at her political power, and she just slammed his whole career, and her voice has tons of power.
Right.
I feel so mixed about everything that's going on right now.
And I mean, and if we just take away like the Aziz Ansari and like it's just like two college students, right? Same story, but it's just two college students. So that we take away the kind of celebrity, because there was this weird dynamic in that story about celebrity and like her kind of like excitement about his celebrity, and then the way that interacted with
the power,
with the power dynamics, right? And so,
but
like that adds this whole extra layer of complexity. But like the same thing is happening in colleges across the country, and and so like,
and that's what we want to talk about, is what's going on with that, because it's happening everywhere.
Right. And so the main thing that I notice about this, and kind of what I want to talk about, is like the thing that astonishes me about that situation is that the man is not tracking the discomfort of the woman. That it's not like registering for him as something that should be attended to. At the very, like, he's either completely unaware of it, or he's aware of it, but his approach is to kind of pretend it's not there and to proceed like it's not there. And like that, like either of those possibilities, and I think probably both happen, I think like that's the problem, right? Like that's the problem from the man's perspective. Like that's the thing that men can do different that will change these situations, is they can start paying attention to the discomfort. If you're in a sexual situation with a woman, to pay attention to her level of comfort and enthusiasm about what's happening. And if you are paying attention to that, to like allow that to be known in the eyes and ears of the group, of the couple, right? Like, so rather than to kind of like proceed as if it weren't happening with fingers crossed, but instead to kind of say, hey, you know, and this is, we're getting into the interventions already, but like just to say like, you know, hey, like, are you having fun? Like, is this fun for you? And like to just create that opening in the dynamic. And you can do that in any number of ways. There's so many things I want to say. Like the reason so there's two things. There is the skill of being able to track and attune to that other person. And then there is the willingness to
adjust,
kind of change to adjust. Exactly. And so I want to talk about one of the things that gets in the way of all of that, which is just this fixation with the goal.
Yes.
Right.
And the scarcity of having that goal. The
Right.
illusion of scarcity or the actual true scarcity.
Right. And there's this irony, which is that the fixation, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That fixation actually creates more scarcity. Yeah, and exactly, like a scarcity, and one of the kind of memes around this idea, one of the ideas is that it stems in part, like the reason that there's so much charge, like there's so much kind of like just fixation and intensity in that the desire of the man to like achieve this goal, like, oh, if I can put my penis inside of her, then like that's like the good, and we need to make that happen at all costs. And it's not like this is necessarily a conscious thought process, but it's like the goal achieving mechanisms of the whole being kick in, and they delete information like, oh, she's not that into this, as being like not useful for achieving this goal, right? Or they delete information like my kind of impulse to back off a little bit and say like, hey, is this fun? Like, is this working for you? That kind of like creating that space, deleting that impulse because like, oh, that's not going to get me towards that goal.
Right.
So instead, like, I'm just going to, and part of what's happening, I think this is true. I mean, who knows? I think this is true, is that the reason there's so much charge in that desire and that goal is in part due to the way that men have been culturally disconnected from from themselves in all of these different ways. Like the culture kind of trains men from a very early age to control and shut down their emotions and their vulnerability. And like this is like a big part of the felt experience of the self. And so then all that's left, the only place where a man can feel himself is in sex. And so then that it becomes like all of this like longing to feel yourself becomes channeled into this one goal. And like, if I can just do this, then I'm gonna feel, then I get to feel myself, I get to feel connected with myself in this whole thing. And I've definitely had the experience of like having a big emotional release that's unrelated to sex, and then having a different relationship with my sexual desire afterwards. Like that it's that there's something that was kind of contracted and pinched that becomes like softer and looser. So I do think that it fits some of my experience, that like part of where that fixation comes from is that kind of cultural pathology. There's another piece which is about like the men's related, like men's hunger for touch, and the fact that like men are starved for touch. I mean, I think everybody in our culture in like the West, in America especially, is starved for touch, and I think men are like especially starved for touch. Like for a lot of men, there just isn't any avenue where they're getting regular physical contact with other human beings. And so that's another place where it's like, but in this, if I can just like get this woman to get naked with me, then I can be touched. And it's again not a conscious process, but there's like all of these compacted needs that get channeled through this one dimension that I think raise the stakes and raise the charge like far outside of what is actually like the appropriate level of stakes and charge.
Right.
And it's also why part of what makes it like woo, like so exciting, right? But at this cost, which is that you actually can't be really conscious and present and in relationship.
Right. So you lose yourself and you lose the other person in the process.
Right.
Which for the woman is like, then it sucks.
Right. Yes, and
for the man too. I don't know. I don't know if the men are tracking as much of how much that sucks as women are.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think because that, like, I think that I mean, of course, it's different in every case and whatever, but I think, like, as a generalization, that because women have more access to themselves through other channels, and by themselves, I specifically mean the kind of felt experience of, like, you know, it's all very complicated, but, like, this is about the felt experience, like like intimacy with yourself. How about that? And so I think because women have more access to that in other channels, there's less of an urgency.
You mean more access to that in other channels, meaning we are socially more encouraged to feel our feelings in other places other than sex?
Right, exactly. And to be intimate with, like, the people that are close to you, to talk about your feelings, like, to be vulnerable, like, all of these things that mean that the charge is less for a woman than a man, an equivalent man in the same situation. And so the woman has more of her consciousness online to be, like, the woman is not kind of, like, so goal-oriented towards, like, I just got to get that cock in me and nothing else matters, right? And if she is, then, like, sometimes women are like that. And when they are, I think that, like, the level of disconnect is not so, like, noticeable or terrible, right? Like, it's like, oh, like, we're just two fucking meat machines bashing against each other. Sometimes that works fine, and but it's when there's, like, the man is like, I just need to get this thing done, and the woman is going, like, well, hang on, like, I don't know how great I feel about this, then that's gonna feel crappy for the woman.
Right.
So there's another cultural piece, which is not about the kind of, like, the disconnection, men's kind of fundamental disconnection. Because I think, like, that disconnection thing, it accounts for some of it, but, like, there are cultures where men are
connected to themselves.
More connected to themselves, that still have, like, you know, not necessarily the greatest, like, sexual dynamics, right? Like,
impact. Yeah. Like, they can still have a kind of violent or aggressive or kind of disconnected sexual impact.
Right. So I think that doesn't kind of, like, address the whole thing. And so there's another piece, which is, again, this is a cultural piece. It's a different cultural piece, which is this idea. And I kind of came across this in explicit form in the pickup stuff, which we haven't talked about yet on the podcast, but we will. And in the pickup stuff, they talk about, like, there's one kind of philosophy is, like, the man is the gas and the woman is the brakes. And so, like, the man's job is to be the gas, so you keep escalating, like, that's their kind of framework, and that's the you know, and, like, there's many different schools of pickup stuff and different people teaching different stuff, but, like, the main drag of it has this idea of, like, yeah, you keep escalating, and then the woman will put the brakes on in different ways, and it's your job to kind of, like, in the slightly more conscious ones, like, stop when she puts the brakes on, and then give it a minute, and then keep escalating again, right? And just keep, like, you are the gas and she's the brakes, and so you're in this kind of battle. And I think that is explicit in the pickup world, but it's implicit in the whole culture, right? Like, the whole culture is geared around that, right? And there's a way that, like, it's kind of men's responsibility culturally to initiate, right? To go and, like, ask her out on the date, and to go and, like, make the move, and, like, the whole, like, so the culture kind of, like, trains men that it's their job specifically, and trains women that it's really not their job, and that it's unladylike, right? I mean, this is not a huge revelation for anyone, but, like, it's unladylike to instigate, to go and give a guy your number, right? Like, I mean, how would you, like, I mean, have you done that? I'm sure you have done that, because you're not always totally ladylike, but, like, how does that live for you, right? Like, does that fit for you, that you kind of have had that cultural training?
Yes, absolutely. And if you were to initiate, it's either socially inappropriate or it's unattractive, or you're going to only get a feminine man if you do that. And, like, it's not. Yeah, and then that turns into not taking any initiative for your sex life, which turns into nobody having as much sex as they want to have. Right.
So, and then the kind of man side of things is, like, you're a pussy if you don't go and, like, ask out that girl at the bar. You know, like, that, the thing in Greece that first song, right? Like, tell me more, did you get very far, right? Like, and there's this whole, I mean, that's just so brilliant. So that dynamic, and here's the thing, there's an evolutionary and an energetic basis for that.
Yes.
Like, it's not like that dividing of the kind of the roles is intrinsically bad.
Right.
Like, I do think that, like, the man embodying, like, the active principle and the woman embodying the receptive principle is part of the sexual dynamic. And so, like, I'm not kind of saying, like, oh, culture is terrible and everybody should be asking everybody out all the time. There should be no differences between the sexes. But just to notice that, like, we want that to be in consciousness. We want to be aware of that cultural presupposition and that kind of maybe biological predisposition, and it's not always actually the best thing to do in the situation to kind of follow it in every moment, right? Like, this is why, you know, like, animals, like, rape each other,
right? And
so let's not do that. And let's not do the kind of, like, rape adjacent, like, very, very pushy until she just gives in. She just, like, acquiesce, yeah, until she just acquiesces to your advances,
or is resigned, right? To
right,
which is what leads to that terrible feeling the next day,
right?
Yeah. So it's both sides. It's not that let's not rape each other, and also let's not totally take the polarity out of everything and ignore the biological impulse or the yin yang of, like, what's going on, because we don't want to lose all sexual polarity either.
Exactly. And
deny maybe a impulse that we naturally have.
We're not saying, men, like, stop approaching women at bars, stop sending messages on OkCupid, just lay back and let the universe fuck you. Because A, it's not gonna work.
Right.
And B, right, it's just really not, like,
no.
Men know this is also part of why men kind of, you know, go out and do that stuff, is because, like, if you lay back and wait for the universe to fuck you, I mean, in the kind of, like, funny way of it fucking you, like the way the universe fucks you, then the universe will fuck you, but in the sense of, like, the universe, like,
bringing you your sexual
making
dreams.
Love to you, bringing you your sexual dreams, like, lying in your room waiting for that to happen, or dressing real nice and, like, hoping that's going to happen, actually doesn't work for men in a way that it does for women. I mean, if she stays in her room, that's not going to work. But if you just go outside and dress real nice, like, and kind of, like, allow the universe to bring these kind of experiences to you, that's actually available for women, right?
It is, and it is not probably as much as it used to be because of the way the gender conversation is going. I don't know that. I mean, yeah, it's available, but I don't think it's, like, as available as it used to be.
That's interesting. And yeah, sure. And it's, like, it's no easier for women in totality. It's just, like, getting a penis inside of you is easier for a woman than getting your penis inside of someone is for a man. Like, that part.
Yeah.
I mean, this is another kind of piece of wisdom from the pickup world, which, you know, the last piece I don't want to code as wisdom, by the way. But this one I like, is that, you know, for men, it's, like, there's a scarcity of sex, and for women, there's a scarcity of good sex.
Yes.
And so both are kind of, like,
scarcity.
And for men, both are in a certain kind of scarcity, and it's not like one is easier than the other. And for women, it's more like they have to kind of keep the doors closed, because there's, like, so much bad sex is available and kind of presenting itself to you that it's like you have to navigate that.
Yes.
Whereas men, that's not the experience for
that's not
men.
Men experience,
right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe there are some, like, incredibly beautiful or, like, movie star men that do have that experience, but for the vast unwashed masses, it's not like that.
Right.
We're not, like, turning people away at the door on the daily. The kind of last piece that I want to say, well, there's a couple, but one is that active principle in the man and receptive principle in the woman. I think, like, yeah, we, like you said, I think you said it really well. We need to make room for that, and we don't want to get rid of all of the polarity, and we don't want to be, like, raping each other or like that.
Right. So here's the moment for sexual evolution for everybody.
Yes.
Which is what you were kind of inspired by that article. Like, let's go to the next place, people.
Right. And one of the things that I really want to, and this kind of contradicts the last thing we were just saying, but that's okay. But that I really want to hammer home, one of the learnings that I had in, like, post pickup world, other worlds that I was studying in, one of the important learnings, I think, is that for the man, giving room, like not just being the gas all of the time, but giving room for the woman to have space to be a yes or a no is actually more, it's like, it's better for the woman because it like actually, you know, it's just a better experience for her. She gets to be more of herself. She has more room for herself and like her preferences, but it's also actually ultimately better for the man. And it's better for the man, one, because women are going to be more likely to want to be around him.
Because they feel safer and they feel like they can have their experience.
Right. And two, in the actual exchanges, there's just more room for richness. Because he's, instead of like the woman being this object that he's kind of just going to get sexually satisfied by, she becomes a subject that he's in relationship with. And there's just more, it just gets more interesting from there.
Yeah.
And so, like, not being the gas, and this is one of the things that I learned in my own sex life that was really, really powerful, was like, oh, like, you, as the man, like, you can be the active principle by holding space for the woman to emerge and for her desire to emerge. And, like, sex is best when it is this dance between desire and satisfaction. It's actually like an art form of playing with these two primary tones of desire and satisfaction, desire and fulfillment. And the problem with the she's the brakes and you're the gas model is that the man provides all of the desire, and then it's all about, there's no room for the kind of dance of it.
It's just the man wanting it and the woman defending until she doesn't want to defend anymore against it.
Right.
And then they have an experience of satisfying, like the orgasm wanting, but it's not.
But it's this kind of, it's this flat satisfaction. It's this like empty calories.
Yeah. Kind of like a getting it done satisfaction. Yeah.
And whereas like as the man, like while you're holding this active principle, you're actually like interacting with the woman in ways that allow her desire and welcome her desire to come out. Then you get to dance with her desire, and it's just like so much more rewarding. It's so much more fun. There's so much more juice in it. Part of what's kind of quote tricky about this is that you have to be willing for it to be something else to come out. Like,
exactly.
You can't just welcome her desire out and be like, oh yeah, I totally, because a lot of men would say, oh, well, I totally welcome her desire. Like, of course.
But you have to also be willing to welcome her shyness, her awkwardness,
yes.
her anger,
her discomfort,
her rage,
yep,
her ambivalence.
Right, like traumatic currents that are running through her from previous, all of that, like her like, I don't want to, her no, right? Like you have to make room for all of that. And then when you make room for all of that,
you have the keys to the kingdom.
Right. I mean, is this true? Does this fit for you?
Yeah.
Like then there's room for her desire and it gets fun.
Yeah. I mean, when I feel safe and wanted and welcomed, no matter every part of me, I mean, it's just like, then we're both in the total surprise of the experience. I have no idea what's going to happen, and neither does he. And then it's an adventure, and it's not checking sex off the list.
Yeah.
And then it's like sex is such a place where you can have like wildly different experiences all the time. And for women, there's so much intimacy in that. There's so much connection and witnessing and like all that stuff that like attention that feels so good. As much as the physical contact feels good, as much as this, the soul spiritual connection, as much as like the physical and the subtle, the intimacy, like the actual connection, which I think is what women are so starving for, is like actually being in a moment with another person.
Mm-hmm.
And having an impact and feeling all of that becomes available. And there are infinite possibilities in that moment when you sign up for that.
Right. And that only becomes available if you are willing to actually be in that moment with that person, which means you are willing for them to be however they are. That's kind of one of the primary takeaways. The other piece is like, you use the word attention, and I think there's these kind of, I've been trying to figure out these interrelated categories, and I don't know how well we're going to do, but there's like attention, and there's attunement, and there's rapport. And these are all kind of different but related things. And I think I want to talk about attunement. Like people say, oh, pay attention, like pay attention. And it's like, well, what does that mean? I think it means really different things for different people. Like maybe like for one person, it means like paying someone a compliment. Like, oh, your eyes are really pretty. That's paying attention, you know, or it means like asking her about like facts about her life or whatever, right? That's paying attention. Like, great. That's good. And attunement is, and this is, you know, a stance that you can take in any situation in life, but we'll talk about it specifically in the sexually. Attunement is when you are paying attention to someone's being. And, you know, by being, I mean, whatever, you know, like their physical, but also their energetic and their emotional and their mental and like the whole kind of sum of who they are, as much as you can pay attention to. It's paying attention to that with the emphasis on how will different things affect them. So if I'm attuned to someone, it means that I have some sense of like, oh, like if I get more energetically, and this is more energetically loud right now, they're going to enjoy that and it's going to light them up. Or I'm going to get more energetically loud right now and they're going to feel kind of like invaded and it's going to be too much and it's going to kind of like fry their circuits, right? And it's not like you have to know that, but you're paying attention to it in the moment so that then you kind of get a bit more loud. And it's like, oh, that was like too much. Or you kind of get like soft and it's like, oh, like I feel connected now, or the other way around, or whatever, right? But it's just a noticing of your impact on them in the moment in real time. And like this is so obviously incredibly applicable to sex, right? But it starts way before sex. It starts like the moment that you see someone in the bar, right? Or wherever you meet someone, in the coffee shop. The moment that you see them, you can be attuning to them. And then the whole relationship can kind of like live through that lens. And I know as a man that that's really been important. I wonder, I think women just more naturally do that. Like it's, again, like for cultural reasons, for biological reasons, for all these reasons, I think women more naturally attune to the people that are around them. And for men, I think it's more something that it's not required for you to kind of get your man stamp. Whereas I think it kind of is required for you to, like a woman that's not very good at attuning, society doesn't want to give her the woman stamp 100%. I don't know if this is true. Like I'm kind of riffing here a little bit.
Yeah, I'm thinking back on my experience of learning about sex. I think my main focus was attuning to myself, not attuning to the man. And now I think I'm working on both at the same time. But
yes,
I had to spend more time attuning to self and what is my desire in this moment and what speed do I need and what, like, it was much more of that training.
Yes, that makes sense. So like for both people, the adjustment is to pay attention to the woman, to attune to the woman. Because yes, and for a variety of reasons. So that's attunement. So I think like that's the kind of one of the primary skills. I also want to talk about rapport, and I don't know, it just like this was just part of what came to me in kind of thinking about this topic.
Yeah, and it was a hit on the last podcast. We got a few messages about one of my friends saying rapport is her new favorite word.
Yes, rapport with self. So this is rapport with other selves, as Carl would say. So I'm going to just say a little about rapport that just pretty much comes directly from the NLP world, and specifically NLP Marin, which if you're ever going to study NLP, that's the place to do it. It's great. So in NLP, when they train people in rapport, what they do is like you sit down with someone and you make the shape of your body the same as the shape of their body. So if they're crossing their legs, you cross your legs. If they have like their hand rested in their chin, or their chin rested in their hand, you rest your chin in your hand. If they make certain kind of gestures, you repeat those gestures, especially when you're talking about the thing that they were talking about when they made the gesture. You try and kind of like have your tone of voice be the same speed, the same volume, the same kind of range between, like, is it a lot of like dynamic range in terms of pitch, or is it kind of more monotone and flat and the same pitch over and over again? Like all of these different variables, you try and use the same words as them. So if they say like, I'm really excited, you say, oh wow, yeah, you're full of, you're really like energetic. It's like, no, you're really excited. You kind of use their language. So all of these are tools for getting in rapport. And like if you want to practice these tools, you can either do that just for fun with people around you and like not tell them. I would choose one of those different dimensions that I just named at a time and just practice that one for a little while and then switch to another one. The best way to do it is to get in a group of 2 other people that actually want to practice this stuff, and you take it in turns. You have one person, you have a conversation where you have one person just being themselves, you have another person doing rapport, and then you have a third person witnessing. So this is a great exercise, and then you rotate, and then you go through all of those different channels. If you spend a weekend doing that, you've done the first weekend of most NLP trainings. And a lot of people have a lot of objections to this, and I can't address all of the objections because we don't have enough time on this recording. But what I'll say is, like, it's presented as a tool for you to help the other person get comfortable for kind of neurological reasons. It helps them as an animal know that you are the same kind of animal as them rather than something that's going to eat them. So they know that you're another sheep and not the wolf. So that's kind of part of the function, and then their system gets to relax and deeper parts of them come out. And some people will say like, oh, well, that's manipulative. And it's like, well, it depends what your intention is in the interaction. Like, that's actually, like, if you want good things for the other person, even if you also want good things for you, but you want good things for both of you, then I think that that's fine. But more important, what it also does is it's a main line to deep attunement. And they don't really talk about this in NLP, but what starts to happen is if you get into rapport with someone, another one is like breathing, like you stop breathing the way that they do, like deep breaths or shallow breaths in the same rhythm. When you start to do these kind of mechanical maneuvers of rapport with someone, you can't help but start to feel what they're feeling, because our bodies are the tools with which we feel. Mm-hmm. And so you just start to feel what they're feeling. And then once you feel what they're feeling, it becomes like in your interests for them to feel good, like purely selfishly. And like, this is what happens when you kind of get to this level of attunement and rapport in sex, is like, at this point, like, I don't think I could have sex with someone that was really uncomfortable, because it would feel awful. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because that's a pleasure of sex is a mutual pleasure, right? And it's a pleasure of like, I'm feeling what you're feeling, and it's that together is what feels good. Mm-hmm. This is where I get phone calls from ex-lovers saying, well, actually, the last time we had sex, you know, we're all striving for this goal. It's never, when you're never all the way there.
It's never perfect. Yeah, it's never perfect. Well, we are pointing to an experience that might be better.
I think is absolutely better. The main takeaway is like, care, both because it's just like the right thing to do if you're a man, is to care about the woman's experience, and also because it's actually going to benefit you more. For many purely selfish reasons. She's going to stick around, she's going to respond better to you, and at this deeper level, you're actually going to feel her pleasure. And so the more she's into it, the better it is for you. And so there's like care, and then there is have the intention to pay attention to this thing that you're caring about, which is her experience. And then there are these kind of more specific stances. There's this rapport stance, which you can actually just train in your general life. And there's this attunement stance, which kind of emerges from the rapport stance, I think, and is related but different, which the best way to practice that is do those rapport drills, but also, again, just have the intention. I'm going to have the intention to pay attention to my impact on this person I'm interacting with over time. And like most, if not all of everything we've said is true about like any interaction that you're having with someone, if it's not purely transactional, if it's not like, well, I'm paying you this money to like clean my car, like you don't have to. But if you're having like a relational experience with someone, which is there for your relational mutual enrichment, all of this stuff that we're talking about, I think, applies. And I'm speaking really, really quickly because we have a time limit on the recording today, and I know we're getting close. So I want to leave some room for you, because I recognize the irony that I've been talking about leaving room for the woman and have not really left that much room for Lance on this call.
What I want to say is, if listening to this brings up hunger, like some sort of desire, hunger, or feeling of sometimes these conversations can feel like, I know when I first started hearing about sexual experiences that are in my opinion, vastly more pleasurable, and in my world, spiritual doesn't have to be spiritual at all. It does not have to be spiritual. It can still be amazing sex, and it doesn't have to do anything with God, but God is fun. this Aziz Ansari article for me brought up like, oh, well, that's just like a normal sexual encounter. And I felt really sad about that. I felt really disappointed and sad that there was such a widespread reaction of that's just how it goes a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that. And there was a time in my life where I thought that maybe, where I didn't know more was possible, and I didn't know that more was possible, and I could take steps to actually have it. This is not so if you're feeling a desire, if you're feeling inspired or hungry, you can expand your range here and have a different experience wherever you are, no matter how much, no matter how little or lot sexual experience you've had. And one thing I think you can do today without even having a partner is build more self-awareness and attunement with self. I really think attuning to self is a huge, and I learned the other way. I learned attuning to other people, and now kind of I did the, celibacy and went back into attunement with self after I had like a lot of sexual experience. But I think you can, starting today, tune into the wider experience of who you are, and that will actually lead to more positive experiences when you're with other people in the future. Or you can join a sex cult.
Depending on the sex cult, that can work.
More is possible. I just feel like sex is such an aggravating topic because it brings up this like, well, fuck you guys. I want to have sex now. I want to have that kind of sex right now. And I don't know if that's true, but I just want to say it's totally possible.
Yeah, it's possible, and it's possible not just by luck.
Yeah.
Right. But by actually your conscious kind of participation and your conscious intentions and your decisions. Great. Okay. How do we close this thing out? I guess we just say that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yes. Email us. Tweet us. We love Twitter right now.
So you can tweet us at H2BOK. I made a mistake. The Twitter handle is actually at H2BOKperson. Now you can tweet us at, how do we tweet you?
Lindsay Chrysler. I'm at Lindsay Chrysler.
I'm at Robbie_Carlton. So you can tweet us. You can email Robbie at howtobeanokayperson.com, Lindsay at howtobeanokayperson.com, or you can fill out that contact form and then we both get it. And there might be an address that we both get it too. But anyway, these are many ways that you can reach us, and we want to hear from you. All right.
Okay.
So thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll be back sooner than last time.
That's right. I feel like we're just getting started. Like, I want to do a whole show about interviewing you about pickup because it's fascinating.
Yes, we have to. Yeah, we have to talk. I'm scared of that because of the lynch mobs that are out there right now. It's just trolling the internet looking for...
I know. Well, I'm scared of just recording this one episode, and we didn't even really say anything, but we said things, and everything will be used against us.
Yeah.
Welcome 2018. Here we go.
Hey, 2018. You do not have to say anything, but anything you say may or may not be used against you.